Assalamualaikum and good day to everyone. Today news is about Malaysia ringgit currency against Chinese yuan currency for previous 3 years from June 2017 to June 2020. Malaysia was the first nation among the ASEAN nations to forge diplomatic relations with China in 1974. Today, China has become a Malaysia major trading partner, where Malaysia production of liquefied natural gas remains as high demanded energy resource in China. As we know, the average foreign exchange rate of Malaysia ringgit against Chinese yuan for previous 3 years is 0.6103. It shows that there are no outliers for this foreign exchange rate and indicate that there is only minimal volatility over the last 3 years. As we can see from graph of 2017, according to Department of Statistics in Malaysia, during 2017 to 2018, Malaysia economic performance expanded to 5.9% in 2017 as compared to 4.2% in 2016. Service, manufacturing and agriculture sectors have been the anchor on the production side. With a strong currency, it will make Malaysia export more expensive to foreign buyers, while possibly making imports downright cheap to buy. In addition, with a strong GDP during 2017-2018, it has boosting the local currency of Malaysia ringgit due to strong economy. As a result, it has recorded in this year as having the strongest currency between Malaysia ringgit and Chinese yuan, which is 0.6532 during 5 September. Aside from that, the economy was confronted with a number of external and domestic challenges in 2018. Major policy and political shifts resulting in part from global trade tensions and Malaysia's historic change of government in May 2018. It became sources of uncertainty for the economy. As we all know, several disruptions in the mining and agriculture sectors as well as commodity exports will affect on domestic activity. In addition, unplanned maintenance shutdowns and pipeline repairs have resulted in lower natural gas output, while production constraints and bad weather conditions have affected rubber and palm oil production. As a result, GDP growth has declined to 4.7%, has affecting the currency level of the Malaysian ringgit against Chinese yuan at the end of 2018. Besides, in 2019, there is decline in agriculture sector performance was mainly due to decrease in oil palm. Since China was the largest importer of Malaysia oil palm at 2.7 million tons due to China's rapid development, it has increased the demand for Malaysian oil palm products. However, due to the decline in agriculture sector performance in Malaysia, particularly in oil palm, it has affected imports of oil palm to China. Because of that, it had an indirect influence on Malaysia's economic performance due to change in GDP, which have an impact on the relative value of Malaysian currency. As a result, it has recorded in 2019 as having the very weak currency between Malaysia ringgit and Chinese yuan, which is 0.5853 during 4 October. Furthermore, the COVID-19 outbreak in 2020 has had a huge impact on the Malaysian economy. It has resulted in a fall in GDP and currency depreciation between the Malaysian ringgit and the Chinese yuan. For your information, Malaysia's economy dropped by 5.6% in 2020. It is the lowest result since the Asian financial crisis in 1998. Since all businesses and manufacturers must comply with the government's SOP, the operations import to China have been affected. However, beginning on February 24, 2020, it shows that the value of 1 Malaysian ringgit can be converted to 0.6 Chinese yuan and above. It indicates that the economy in Malaysia has slowly recovered due to COVID-19. For next point, I will invite Nurul Syuhada as a presenter.
Thank you, Hani. Next, I'm going to explain about the factors affecting the Malaysian ringgit against Chinese yuan. As we can see from the above figure, it shows the fluctuation of exchange rate of Malaysian ringgit against Chinese yuan throughout a year from June 2017 until June 2018. The figures show how easy the fluctuation of Malaysian ringgit against Chinese yuan since the graph curve is constantly changing. However, the trend line shows a descending straight line, which indicates that the exchange rate of Malaysian ringgit against Chinese yuan has facing a decline throughout the year. It indicates a good changing in exchange rate since Malaysian ringgit has appreciated by the end of June 2018. From the figures, we can distinguish which state has the highest or lowest exchange rate. on August 28, 2017, we can see that the exchange rate was having a continuous increase until September 5, 2017, where it was recorded as the highest exchange rate of Malaysian ringgit against Chinese yuan throughout the year. This indicates that Malaysian ringgit has depreciated, where the value that Malaysians have to pay if they want to buy 1 Chinese yuan during that date is 0.6532. Meanwhile, the lowest value of Malaysian ringgit exchange rate during that period is on June 29, 2018, which is for 0.6105. Therefore, the exchange rate of Malaysian ringgit against Chinese yuan is still considered a good exchange rate, since during that period, Malaysian ringgit does not exceed Chinese yuan, which shows that Malaysian ringgit is stronger than Chinese yuan. There are two factors that are affecting the fluctuation of this exchange rate. Firstly is political stability. With a good political stability, the country is able to attract more foreign investment, which help to increase the currency rate. Meanwhile, a poor political stability will devalue the country's currency rate. Moreover, political stability also affects local economic drivers and financial policies. These two things is very crucial since it will affect the currency's exchange rate in the long term. The figure represents the political index in China, which indicates that their country is facing a quite poor political stability since the index value is negative. In 2017, China has faced an uncertainty of political policy and regulation since the US country has a new elected president, which is Donald Trump. China was worried because they are not sure what Donald Trump will do with the trade policy once he taken the responsibility as the new president of US. According to Louis Kaj, who is the head of Asia Economics at Oxford Economics in Hong Kong, stated that due to the Trump's unconventional trade postures and confrontational remarks about Beijing, gives unpleasant diversion towards the Chinese policymakers since they are trying to refine the policy to keep the GDP from collapsing. For example, Donald Trump has threatened to impose up to 45% tariff on Chinese export to the US. Hence, this will make importers lose interest toward China's product since the percentage of tariff that they need to pay is very high. Thus, Chinese yuan would not be able to exceed Malaysian ringgit even though in 2017 Malaysian ringgit are at peak. Secondly is the current account balance deficit. Based on the figure, we can see that China has facing a drastic deficit in their current account balance in 2018. This has caused China to end their dream in accumulating the trade surplus as to maintain the title of top exporters for years. The deficit in their current account balance was down from 188 billion in 2017 to 24.13 billion only in 2018. As known to the public, the current account balance is the balance of payment, comprises the balance of trade in goods and services, plus with net investment income from overseas asset and net transfer. A deficit towards current account balance usually occurs because of the result of an increase in the net trade deficit where the value of import exceeds the value of export. Basically, this is what happened to China in 2018. When China's net trade deficit is rising, it will drop the value of export, which causes the demand for Chinese yuan to decrease. As a result, there will be a net outflow of money from China's circular flow. Therefore, the businesses, company or individuals will pay for imports in their own currency, but this is eventually converted into the currency of the exporting nation. Hence, this will lead to an increased supply of Chinese yuan in the foreign exchange market. The increase in the China money supply causes their interest rate and rate of returns on domestic currency deposit to fall, which will lead to a depreciated domestic currency. Therefore, the Chinese yuan is depreciated, which causing the exchange rate of Malaysian ringgit against them appreciated in 2018. And that's all from my part. Next, I would like to invite the next presenter, which is Nur Najwa Nabila.
Thank you, Shuhada. Now, I will explain further the effects of exchange rate for the year June 2018 to June 2019. This is the Malaysian ringgit against Chinese yuan history date from June 2018 to June 2019. Based on this graph shown, The highest currency recorded is on 16 August 2018, which is 1 CNY is equal to 0.5917 MYR, and the lowest currency is 1 CNY to equal to 0.6244 MYR. This chart analysis in the graph shows that fluctuation in buying foreign currency. It can be seen that the value of buying foreign currency is not too expensive and cheap because the changes of currency is stable when its value does not change significantly over time. There are few factors affecting the exchange rate of Malaysian ringgit and Chinese yuan, including inflation, interest rate, and balance of trade. The first factor affecting the exchange rate of Malaysian ringgit and Chinese yuan is inflation. When the local currency appreciates, it will reduce the inflation because imports will become cheaper and export will become expensive. This means that our country can import goods and services in lower prices. Imports will become more attractive compared to exports and will cause the demand for domestic goods to fall, while there is an increase in the number of imports from China. With export prices rising, the manufacturers have a greater incentive to decrease the cost in order to stay competitive. For example, the inflation rate in 2018 shows the positive trend compared to in 2017, which recorded at 0.88 and 3.87% respectively. The negative result in inflation rate is due to the elimination of goods and services tax from size to 0%. This has affected the inflation rate, especially for the transport and food prices to be lowered for the rest of the year. Also, the economic growth will show a positive trend. This means that when inflation rate is low, our local currency will appreciate against foreign currency. The second factor that affects the exchange rate of Malaysian ringgit and Chinese yuan is interest rate. Malaysian ringgit appreciates in 2018 because of high interest rate compared to in 2017, which recorded at 4.23 and 0.8%. Both of interest rate during 2 years showed a big difference, which has affected the exchange rate. When the local currency has higher interest rates, it provides a better return to lenders in the economy. This will attract the foreign country to lend more, and the demand will continue to increase. Therefore, the local currency exchange rate to rise. A high currency exchange rate is beneficial to importers while it is bad to its exporters. However, there is a strong relationship between interest rate and inflation, which is if the interest rate increases, the inflation also will increase. The value and exchange rate of a country's currency are more likely to grow if it can establish a good balance of increasing interest rates without an accompanying increase in inflation. Next factor is balance of trade. The reason why Chinese yuan depreciates on 16 August 2018 is because of the decreases in trade balance value. According to the statistic, China's trade balance in 2018 is lower compared to in 2017, which is $350.95 trillion and $419.55 trillion. This means that in 2018, China's demand for its goods and services for export is lower than import. As a result, the currency's value will slowly depreciate. Also, for Malaysian ringgit currency appreciate in August 2018 as the total trade of balance rose to 1876 trillion, which has increases by 5.9% from the previous year. It is the highest record according to the Department of Statistics Malaysia. The major product of Malaysia's exports are including electrical and electronic E&E product, palm oil and palm oil based and refined petroleum products. It can be shown that money inflow of domestic currency appreciates more from foreign markets. It also can lead to economic growth as more employment and increase the productivity of goods and services. Also, it helps to strengthen more of home's currency against Chinese yuan currency. Thank you. That's all from me. Next, I will pass to Shazlia for the next presentation.
Thank you, Norna Jawanabila. Now I would like to explain further about Malaysian ringgit against Chinese yuan. As can be seen in the graph, this is the exchange rate of Malaysian ringgit against Chinese yuan from June 2019 until June 2020. It showed a strong currency on March 25 and the weakest currency on October 4, 2019. The declining trend of the currency between Malaysian ringgit against Chinese yuan at the time was due to the currency volatility. Volatility has made international trading more difficult since it increases the risk of an exchange rate. The danger of losing money due to a change in the exchange rate is referred to as exchange rate risk. The Malaysian ringgit appreciated during the second half of 2019 to January 2020, implying that the exchange rate strengthened, but this will to result in a decrease of Malaysia's exports since fewer goods can be purchased by China with the same amount of currency, and will increase imports in the relative prices of Chinese goods and services, while Malaysia pay less to get the same amount of goods and services from China. However, on February 4, 2020 until March 25, 2020, the value of the Malaysian ringgit exchange rate is starting to depreciate or fall. The changes in relative prices will increase Malaysia's export and make Malaysia's goods cheaper, meaning more goods can be purchased by China with the same amount of currency and lesser Malaysia's import, since Malaysia has to pay more to get the same amount of goods and services from China. Thus, according to various research, currency volatility creates economic uncertainty and lower investments. Reduced investment has an adverse influence on economic performance. Next, the factor influence Malaysia ringgit against Chinese yuan is COVID-19. The COVID-19 outbreak in 2020 has had a substantial influence on the Malaysian economy, leading to the reduction in GDP and the depreciation of the Malaysian ringgit against the Chinese yuan. Malaysia's economy will fall by 5.6% in 2020, the lowest level since the 1998 Asian financial crisis, because all enterprises and manufacturers are required to follow the government's SOP. Activities imported into China have been impacted. As can be seen on the graph, the Malaysian ringgit currency started to depreciate on March 9, 2020. It happened because the Malaysian government announced a movement control order for everyone and every sector, such as international travel is not permitted and all foreign travelers must get approval from authorities to prevent the spread of COVID-19 cases. That started on March 18, 2020. The currency continues to depreciate, with the lowest being on March 25, 2020, a week after the government announced the MCO. However, Malaysian currency started to appreciate after the government announced the CMCO, Conditional Movement Control Order, starting from May 4, 2020, which allowed the selected sectors to operate, but must adapt and follow a new norm that was stipulated by the government. Following that, the currency began to recover as the government issued recovery movement control orders in almost all sectors that could be operated, but only if standard operating procedures were followed. It can be seen that the currency started to recover on June 3, 2020. Thus, COVID-19 had significantly had an impact on the Malaysian economy, leading to the Malaysian currency devaluation. Lastly, the factors that influence the changes in the currency are market potential. According to Malaysia's Trade Statistics Review, China has become Malaysia's largest trading partner for the 11th year, with a trade value of 360.6 billion ringgit. Indeed, the outbreak has increased demand for medical products in both nations, resulting in a rise in the number of export and imports. Since Malaysia was once the world's largest glove maker, the demand of gloves is increasing, especially from the Europe and the United States. However, top glove corporations sees a shortage in their products because the virus spread quickly and exceeded their capacity to produce more gloves. Malaysia has to face a shortage of about 50% to 80% of the product because of the higher demand for products. Due to the shortage of products, it has affected the exports of rubber gloves to China. The decreasing number of exports can affect the GDP in Malaysia, while at the same time having an impact on the Malaysian currency. In this situation, market demand is greater than supply, causing the market price to rise. Then the increased demand for Malaysian ringgit from foreign countries will increase the real GDP in Malaysia, causing the Malaysian ringgit to appreciate. As the number of rubber gloves have recorded tremendous growth of 123.3% in 2020, Malaysia's currency becomes more valuable, and Malaysia should take this opportunity to further strengthen bilateral trade with China. Next, I will pass to Wan Rushmaida to continue this presentation.
Thank you, Nur Shazlia. I will continue with some recommendations to improve Malaysia's currency. There are few monetary and fiscal policies that can be implemented into the Malaysian government system in order to mitigate the effects of the low currency value. These policies are intended to maintain the economy's long-term stability for the benefits of the nation and its population as a whole. Firstly, increase interest rate. Bank Negara Malaysia can increase interest rate for a short period of time, as it will make Malaysian currency become more valuable. The foreign investor would move their funds to Malaysia to take the advantage of the high rate offered, because saving or investing during increase in interest rate is more likely to produce higher return. As a result, when demand for Malaysia exceeds than the other countries,
the Malaysian currency's value will appreciate. Secondly, reduce inflation. Inflation is defined as an increase in the price of goods and services. When the price of the product increases, it indicates that there is an underlying demand for that product. Malaysia can lower its inflation by two ways, which are by executing contractionary monetary policy and increased reserve requirement. Firstly, contractionary monetary policy. Malaysia's government can lower inflation by implementing a contractionary monetary policy. It is to reduce the amount of money in the economy by decreasing the bond prices and increasing interest rate. This will help to reduce Malaysia's expenditures because when there is less money available, people will prefer to keep it and save it rather than spend it. Furthermore, Malaysia also can reduce the loan supply as it will reduce the economy of Malaysian expenditure. Therefore, it will help Malaysia's economy to reduce inflation. Secondly, increase reserve requirement. The statutory reserve requirement (SRR) ratio is the amount of reserve or cash deposit that a bank must keep in Bank Negara Malaysia Reserve and must not lend out to the customers. If Bank Negara Malaysia agrees to increase reserve requirement, commercial bank will be required to keep enough reserve on hand to cover withdrawal and have to reduce the money of loan available to the customers and businesses. Therefore, it will reduce the money supply and indirectly improve Malaysia's GDP. Thirdly, tariff reduction. Tariff reduction will encourage a large number of importers to bring their goods to Malaysia. When Malaysia lowers its tariff, international exporters find it easier to market their product and Malaysia will receive revenues on the goods and services they have brought into the country, which will increase Malaysia's GDP. Last but not least, political stability and performance. Political stability and performance have a significant impact on the country's ability to export and import of goods. Foreign investors will seek a stable country with a strong economic performance to invest their capital. Therefore, investors is more likely to put their money into a country that has many beneficial attributes rather than a country with political and economic risk. With that, I will invite Nurul Hani as the next presenter.
Thank you, Wan Shuaida. To summarize, currency is important because the exchange rate or the price of one currency in terms of another determines to define Malaysia's economic health and as a result, the well-being of all its citizens. For these reasons, exchange rates are among the most watched, analyzed and governmentally manipulated economic measures. After doing this analysis of currency rates between the Malaysian ringgit and the Chinese yuan, we can see that there is substantial fluctuation, particularly throughout 2020. It indicates that inflation, fluctuate in interest rate, political stability, and deficit in current account has affected the currency exchange rates. It also including decrease in balance of trade and volatility of currency between Malaysia and China. Even the outbreak of COVID-19 also has worsened the situation. However, if Malaysia develops a better strategy such as increase the interest rate, implement monetary policy and increase the export and import of goods and services from Malaysia, it can enhance the value of its currency. That's all from us. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.